mess it up.
Alright, hello everyone, and welcome to round number 1 of our 5th Casuals tournament. I'm Blues here with Urand, and what do you see from this map?
Well, it's not a great map, and I kinda hate it.
Yeah, it looks very much like all the irons in one corner.
There are some interesting things you can do, because at least the market prices are pretty cool. With food at double price, with power at double. So there are some non-conventional starts that you can go for.
Yeah, I think I do expect to see probably 2 Nomads, then maybe some people working with the high iron tiles. I don't think anyone's going to want to go into that northeast corner. There's also that medium iron in the northwest that might be usable. Although a bit sad.
I'm mildly curious about Scientist with the 2 low iron tiles in the southeast-ish.
Well, I am very concerned for Tufty Indigo here. I do believe they were mentioning that they might not have played with Jupiter's Forge before, which would explain part of
Oh, yeah,
this round.
that is not what you want to do with the Nomad, because you need that silicon for upgrades rather than steel.
RCX going for a bit more of a standard start with iron and steel, although not going for the high iron and having that steel already auto off is also just a bit awkward. Zorbaz getting his aluminum blocked off by Adderfield. That's a nice move there. Going to be a fair bit ahead based off of that.
And it's quite annoying. If I was Zorbaz, I would consider just ditching the low and taking the medium. Because you'll
Yeah,
never get adjacency for that one tile, and you might as well go for shipping the better aluminium than sticking with this one.
right, that'd definitely be a reasonable move. You don't even have to use the return.
I'm having Discord problems on my end. Looks like.
That's definitely going to be an adventure. It is something he can afford to put up. He does have most of what he needs for that. It's just okay. Actually, that was maybe a claim buy. The return claim went for the carbon, or the other way around. Either way, point is he doesn't have anything to defend this Geo with, and that's really awkward. Also, he has nearly 14,000 dead, so it's going to be a very slow start regardless. Yeah, these iron mines already turned off, no big surprise there. Just not tiles that can do anything at this point. That's going to be very awkward. Food would definitely be a nice place to move. That's going to be hard to afford. Tufty definitely needs to find a place to get silicon, but all the good silicon really has been taken by the other 2 nomads. Maybe you want to get a bit bold here, try to go on without any silicon, and just in case you weren't aware, Yarn, I can't hear anything anymore. Okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was having some technical problems for a
I
moment.
see,
I had
no
to
problem.
hop out and hop in. But yeah,
Alright.
there's food on the map. It's Adderfield, so he's setting himself up to win the game at this point, because that's the only thing on the map that's making money currently.
Yeah, Tufty Indigo starting to go into farms as well. That should be helpful, but the position overall is going to be difficult with those 2 wasted tiles. I guess they can be returned, or they can be transitioned to something like wind. Both would be good options, but they need to happen soon once these farms start pulling in money.
Yeah, it's the right call, but it's such a rough start that it's probably going to take a while for them to actually get going.
Right, I think you see a similar sort of issue with RCX Dude. I mean, it's different resources, but the idea is really just a lot of raw collection, not really a lot of production. Too much iron, too much water. Sometimes that's fine, but the prices weren't really working with that, and just power's getting so high already that by the time he manages to scrape to HQ3, gonna be in a lot of trouble. Also doesn't have any aluminum, which is a big deal with this price.
Yeah, what he's doing is basically just a very good, solid standard found, except this time the market is basically saying that you cannot do a good standard found. You have to do something different. You have to go into early food. You have to maybe go into early power. Because steel
Right.
is worth nothing, and so is water.
Yeah, steel starting low is definitely the biggest issue with that, and then glass colony, high food, high power means that this debt is really being a problem very quickly. Atterfield still doing very standard things, working out nicely. Zorbaz had an interesting move of placing his solar panels next to Atterfield's base.
I'm not sure I like that.
Right, I'm not sure there's all that much to be gained from doing that.
I think I would have preferred to have them on top of water.
Right, on top of water is fine, just adjacent is fine. You could probably connect into that water sooner or later. And if Atterfield takes that water, it's fine anyway. There's better water to the east.
And yeah, this is probably one of the main reasons why you probably don't want to put them next to someone else, because if someone else attacks...
Although it's Zorbaz that attacked that area after scrapping his solar panels. So
Well,
I don't even begin to understand what the idea behind that is.
so mind games.
Okay, I think he maybe just forgot to return the tiles before
Oh,
dropping
that's
the
a good
EMP.
point.
Maybe not realizing that you can't return empty tiles even when they're frozen. Either way, Atterfield pulling off such a huge lead just really based off of this food.
It was started double price, and he was the first into it, and he's still... Well, okay, RCX Dude is finally moving out of steel and getting into that food, so he should be able to pull himself out of the pit that he dug for himself.
On the other hand, Atterfield is running into a problem that we see from him quite often. Just sitting on this huge pile of cash and resources and not really doing anything with it. He could easily take an upgrade, he can start buying into someone. Right now he has many, many thousands of dollars more than he needed. So it's just a lot of wasted time. But the investments in glass and other things are nice to see. Just don't delay your upgrades to do that.
Yeah, it's always a dilemma in that you can make a lot of money by just sitting on a resource, but then if you're sitting on the resource, you're not necessarily making progress in game, and potentially setting yourself behind.
So power has been staying strong this game. Part of that is that, well, Atterfield's solar panels did get frozen, and RCX Dude and Tufty Indigo both only went into one wind turbine for the longest time, so no one was really producing a large surplus consistently, and that was keeping the power price high. Definitely want to be careful about doing these things with the single wind turbines. RCX Dude really expanding to 3 now is probably a good move. He doesn't have room really to build all that much more next to his base anyway, so having the 3 remote tiles close by is fine.
I'm still a little unhappy about that iron production, especially since you move out of steel, so it's kind of a worthless resource that just isn't doing anything for you. In fact, it's probably losing you money on power.
Yeah, one option definitely would have been just to go for 2 pairs of wind turbines instead. One of the pairs replacing the iron mines. That might have been better.
Yeah, that's what I thought maybe was the idea behind the 2 mediums instead of the high, is that these are better tiles for wind turbines, potentially. It felt like you can just take them anyway, together
We have
with
a hard to
high.
come by land claim available to the highest bidder.
And so Adderfield has quite a lead still. Not really doing that much with it. Still has the option to upgrade, but choosing not to.
Right, it's pretty unfortunate because he could pretty easily have gotten a majority buy, or maybe two off by this point. If he'd played this a little differently, he could easily be at HQ5 with lots of advanced buildings down. He is building a hacker right now, and that'll help him make even more money. But what's he going to do with it?
Well, Hackeray should complement the way he's been playing this so far, but yeah, if you're just making money and not doing anything with it, that's not necessarily an optimal way to win the game.
Right, because there are even just plenty of options for him. He has this goon squad down and these reactors turned off. He could probably just go into a patent lab or an optimization center under that goon squad. He can do just any number of things. Even an off-world at this point would be solid at 26k. Just need to optimize food a bit to go along with that.
Yeah, I'm wondering what he's going to hack. He's going to hack glass, which I'm not happy about because he's not actually producing glass. And glass is such a good market that everyone is moving into it, so by the time this hack goes off, people are going to be challenging him all over the place.
Yeah, already RCX dude into 4 glass kilns. And there's no even really great way to shut that down besides black market. You have 2 people producing silicon, so you can't even drive up the price there and feel safe about that. Well, actually 3 people producing silicon now. And there's the freeze. Which is fine, but there's that nice dip in the glass price there.
It looks like Tufty is finally getting a grip on what the nomads are meant to do, but unfortunately at this point it's the other 2 nomads are running away with the game.
Right, I guess if nothing else, definitely a good learning experience. Managed to eventually return those 2 iron claims, move them into the silicon, getting some aluminum down now, which is going to be really profitable because people just did not respect aluminum appropriately. I guess mostly is RCX dude and Tufty Indigo that did not grab aluminum for the longest time, and Zorbaz not getting into that medium until too late. Although, honestly, he should have been in the high right off founding. Adderfield never should have been able to get that. Optimization Center auction.
It's really good. Chems are still super cheap.
Prices are still super high in a few places, so 32k seems perfectly reasonable. Zorbaz still in a manageable amount of debt.
Adderfield seems to actually be getting some work done with the Hackeray.
Right, moving into an electronics short works very nicely now that everyone's in glass.
Yep, and people are probably not going to go into electronics too quickly, and in general, even if he wasn't producing, it's probably better than the glass shortage.
Yeah, it's so much harder to produce enough electronics to drive the price down.
Price manipulations to begin shortly.
Although we are also just seeing some of the consequences of Adderfield playing this out the way he did. He had such a massive lead, and now Zorbaz is in a credible position to threaten him.
Zorbaz is executing the perfect attack that he could be executing in this position, I think. Exactly as the shortage is coming up, and Adderfield doesn't want to sell out of electronics, so he effectively has less cash than the numbers on the UI say, because he's saving.
Zorbaz doesn't necessarily know that his spy is 1 tile too far up, but it definitely works out very nicely for that reason.
Yeah, but even if he doesn't know that, still a perfectly executed attack, I think.
The engineers have
Fair
advanced
enough.
production.
Although Zorbaz is doing some things that I think are a bit questionable, his buildings are definitely a lot more clumped than seems necessary, especially for a nomad. Other things, this triple wind turbine seems pretty much like overdoing it. He already has the geo established. I don't think you want to commit to 3 remote tiles like that as a nomad.
Let's continue to improve. Those filthy
I'd much
bastards.
rather see something like a play into superconductor, go into solar panels. You have a very natural way in and out of them as a nomad.
Yeah, important to know that he only has 2 claim returns left at this point. So he can't possibly get all of those wind turbines back, so he's gonna be stuck with at least 2 of them, most
New
likely.
land is available for auction.
And Adderfield is still refusing to participate in the stock game, still sitting on that cash. Which
Right, at
makes
this
it
point,
difficult for him to actually win the game at this point, now that he has basically lost the initial stock battle.
right, he still has enough to buy up the rest of Zorbaz's stock, but by that point he's 50k behind in the cash battle. And that's just the place he really didn't need to be.
He still does have an optimization
Prepare for
center
pending market adjustments.
and hackery, so he should be able to be making more money than Zorbaz.
The black market is open for
Right,
business.
Zorbaz doing some interesting things with the optimization center. I guess the big thing that concerns me is all the attention into oxygen in particular. Just doesn't seem like the market you necessarily want to focus on.
Yeah, the first optimizations usually are meant to go into resources that you can produce in much easier fashion. Like
Right, especially
with
with Zorbaz in 2 pairs of reactors. It's just going to be difficult to overcome the life support cost, and you're just not producing much in the first place. Could probably more effectively compete in electronics, maybe put some into power, save one of those claims, any number of things.
I do like the water optimization, though. That's kind of I would say the priority goes for raw resources, if there are any that are just incredibly valuable. And water is fairly valuable still. Then you go
Yeah,
into regular resources like food, and only then you consider stuff like electronics and oxygen.
at any rate, looks like Zorbaz is well on his way to buying out Adderfield, 85% of the way there. Adderfield not nearly as close the other way. Thought the Indigo RCX dude, we've been paying a bit less attention to them recently, and well, they've just fallen a bit behind off some of the early decisions and having a bit of trouble catching back up. At this point, RCX dude really needs to get back into steel. He's doing that. Probably should get back into iron as well.
Yeah, he can wait a little bit with iron, but not too long.
A new claim is available for auction.
Zorbaz just sold down several hundred silicon at $1. Really trying to scrape together the cash to buy out Adderfield, but should be able to see through the cash plus resources. Not quite there yet.
Congratulations,
That's a pretty cheap claim.
pirates. I hate
Yeah,
those
definitely
filthy
going to serve
bandits.
him well.
Yeah, I can see how Tufty and RCX maybe don't want to spend their debt on more claims, but they kind of need something to try to even hope to get back. Fortunately, it's probably way too unlikely at this point.
Right. If something was going to happen, it probably needed to happen a few souls ago. I'm also pretty worried about what's going on with RCX dude right now. Did just take an upgrade, I guess. That's where all his claims came from. This third iron mine seems very excessive. Going into all this glass again, I guess, is fine in some ways, but also just not the most exciting of things. Carbon seems like a really important market. Zorbaz going into these 2 lows. I guess. Wait, what?
Carbon is a little difficult.
I'm assuming Adderfield bought into a ton of that before getting bought up. There's no way the real price is $500.
He was definitely messing with the price. I'm pretty sure.
Which didn't make a ton of sense to me since Zorbaz was the one that was pulling in the carbon all game.
Oh yeah, he was actually losing carbon, but he was still trying to hack it. Which usually isn't necessarily a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it works out as a way to just make life that much more difficult for everyone else, but eventually life's going to get difficult for you too.
At this point, it's just a matter of cleanup, and I think Zorbaz should get started on cleaning up.
Right, Zorbaz could pretty easily just sell out of some stock, shift by Tufty Indigo, and then sell out of the rest, shift by RCX Dude. It's fine that he's not doing that. This is, I guess, theoretically safer, but does prolong things a bit.
Well, they still have undefended stocks. I'm not really sure if there's any reason not to start buying into them.
An expansive HQ has been upgraded.
Especially after this upgrade, there's really no reason whatsoever.
Sold. The black market is open for business.
Yeah, I'm looking at some charts. It looks like Adderfield definitely lost a ton of money on carbon
The engineers have advanced our production.
and never sold it out, so I'm assuming that, yeah, it confirms it.
Yeah. The shortage did end up going off as well for him. Still not entirely sure why the choice was made to hack carbon. You can already see just 301 produced, 775 building input. So he's definitely bleeding a significant amount. You can also just see 1 low carbon quarry and 4 electronics factories.
Yeah, that's kind of a problem sometimes when you sometimes you're in a situation when you have to hack the same resource over and over. And I don't know, I feel like some people just don't like that or something. Or sometimes
Yeah,
you're
and
just misread the situation and think that you can afford to hack different resources, but you really should be sticking with one.
right, sometimes that's just the safer play. There are arguments for not sticking on one resource constantly. If people catch on, they can start doing small things, sort of counter those hacks, but it's as long as you're paying attention to the prices, chances are not much is going to happen.
And that's gonna be game one.
Not really sure what to say about this one. Adderfield just really getting off to a very nice, solid start off of the food and just not investing that money into anything that would carry him through, not making an early push on anyone. Neither, if he went either direction, I think he would have been fine, but fortunately, he just sat back and gave people time to catch up. Zorbaz made the most of that opportunity.
Yeah, I think the stock play really decided this game the most, because Adderfield had the perfect opportunity to defend himself, maybe even counterattack. He chose not to stick to that shortage, and well, there he is
Right.
now.
I'm not sure that necessarily made the difference in the game. I think if Adderfield ended up defending himself and being aggressive on Zorbaz, they probably end up. They definitely end up much closer. They probably end up around the same place in the race. But yeah, that was definitely one big point that changed things. With Tufty Indigo, It was just really the rough start off of the iron. RCX Dude, I think, had a lot of solid ideas. Couldn't afford to use that much steel early with the price starting that low. Ended up with him stagnating on HQ2. And then when he eventually made the transition into a lot of life support, he was trying to support that all off of just 2 low waters, which wasn't quite enough. And I think that also ended up doing a lot of work for Zorbaz, who just had a lot more water income than anyone else.